Cool. Looks like we're live. Recording should be all set. We'll give it just a few minutes here and let some folks trickle in. We appreciate the folks that are in here for taking the time out of your evening and catching up with the folks over at Huntin. I know we've done a handful of these this year. Do you guys know what number we're on as far as webinars?
Boy, I know.
3 or 4, I think.
Yeah,
This could be the fourth.
several, and I know we've got a handful left as well. So if you haven't seen the previous ones, we've covered a few state specific ones and building out like an overarching application season strategy and all sorts of other good stuff. If you haven't seen those, just for the folks that are on, check out our YouTube, the onX Hunt YouTube. We do put these up on YouTube after the fact, so lots of good content out there that's fully accessible, whether you're live in this or not. Obviously, if you're live, it's an added bonus because then we get to answer questions and be a little bit more interactive. But we got a couple things here I'll run through, and then I'll kick it over to these guys. So obviously, we have the folks over at Huntin here with us. We have Austin, Jared, and Garth, and then a few folks probably on the back end that will be answering questions as well. So just a couple of quick reminders. The chat function down there is great. Use that to let us know where you're tuning in from, talks amongst yourselves. But as far as like the questions go that you'd like us to answer toward the end, make sure you're dropping those in the Q&A function, not the chat, so we make sure to see those. And then we'll get to as many questions as we can at the end. I'm sure there'll be quite a few. Reminder that your audio and video are off, so you're muted. We're not seeing your video. Don't worry about that. Also, another quick reminder, all personal onX account stuff, make sure you're emailing that to help@onxmaps.com instead of asking in the chat or the Q&A. Just a lot better way for us to get you the answers that you need and get you squared away. So let's see, a couple more quick things before we kick it off here. We are doing a giveaway at the end, so stick around from that. And then we're also going to be talking a lot about our mule deer hunt giveaway in Montana. So be sure to stick around for that. We'll give you all the details necessary to get entered. It's super simple, and want to make sure that you're entered in that because 2 lucky folks are coming out to Montana this fall for a mule deer hunt on us. So stick around for that. And I think that's pretty much it. Oh, one other note, if you are watching this after it's live, obviously the giveaway that we're doing at the end is closed, not the mule deer hunt giveaway. We got a couple more weeks, I believe, or another week of entry on that mule deer hunt giveaway. So with that, I will kick it over to the folks at Huntin. They're going to walk through a bunch of different slides here, and then we'll get to some Q&A at the end. I'll let everybody introduce themselves, and actually I'll kick it off. Introduction, probably should have started with that, but Dylan Dowson here from the onX Hunt side. I've been with onX for a little over 7 years, and I'm on the marketing side, so anything Western big game is kind of my lane as far as the marketing side goes. And just feel really fortunate to work where I do and have the relationships with different companies such as Huntin. So I know I personally learn a ton on these, so I'm going to kick it over to them and sit back and learn a bunch myself.
Thanks, Dylan. Well, we're excited to be here with you tonight. I'm Austin Atkinson, worked here at Huntin for about 8 years as a hunt advisor, deal a lot with the magazine and a lot of the research that goes into what we do here. So I love hunting and love exploring new places, checking things off the bucket list.
And I'm Garth Jensen. I've been with Huntin now for 9 years in the professional hunt advisor category. It's been a great place to work. I mean, honestly, I knew quite a bit coming in, but not even a thumbnail compared to what I know now after working here for that long. So I just feel very fortunate to be able to do this and then share it with other people that are looking for that little bit of knowledge that might, put them in the hunting situation this next year.
Well said, Garth. I like that. You like working here. Jared Lyle, I'm the CEO here at Huntin. I feel really privileged to work here with great teammates like Austin and Garth on tonight's call. But in general, we've got a team of about a little over 30 people. Our sole purpose is to help our members go on more hunts with better information. We're hoping tonight helps you, whether you're a member or not, kind of in the same track. But again, feel very blessed to be here as well.
I'm gonna go ahead and share our screen here. We titled tonight's masterclass "Point Paralysis." It's kind of an interesting term, maybe not one you've heard, but since it is application season, we feel that point paralysis is something we may suffer from. And so as we go through this, we hope you look at some of our questions and say, oh, is that me? Am I the problem? Do I have a problem? And what should I do next? So a few questions we get here at the office, mostly as they relate to points and application strategies. It's like, should I wait for a trophy hunt? Should I go on hunts more often? How do I cash in on my points? Is there really a return on investment for all these years I've built up points? Common one, am I in no man's land? Meaning I'm behind the curve, I've got some points, but I just can't seem to catch any of the hunts that I want. What about all these changes? Every state in the West seems to have changes just coming one after another.
Every year.
Yeah, it keeps us on our toes here at Huntin' Fool, that's for sure. Can I actually build points? Should I build points for my kids? What about point creep? We explain this almost every day to our members that call in or have these questions. How do I avoid it? And how do I react to point creep? Raffles versus putting in the state draw. Sometimes your money may be better used on a state raffle to win a tag. I know that sounds like lottery type odds, but it might be true. And what are the future point systems? And you have to consider your age versus the timelines we're going to talk about tonight. If you're 75 years old and you just want to get in the point game, you need to look at some hard truths on the states you're applying for. So was that said well enough on the age thing?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, realistically, I mean, there's a lot of guys, depending on what they're going for, they would have to face a hard truth at 30, depending on what they want to go for. So you got to be realistic with what you want.
That's right. So a couple states we wanted to talk through when the state uses the same word as maybe another state, but it means something entirely different. And I know these may be basics to some of you, but it's important to start understanding how the draw works in the states you're looking at. So at the top, obviously I've got random draw, truly random, think lottery type. You get one entry, your name's in the hat, and you're equal against everybody else. We've got lists of states that those take place in. Some states like Colorado, Oregon, and Wyoming, it's not all species that are random. Only certain species are random in those states. So make sure you understand which game you're playing. Second one is a bonus point draw, which a true bonus point draw is just a random draw, but you get extra chances in the hat based on how many points you have. Some of those states will square your points and give you that many extra chances, but realize there is no cap or preference type draw in a true bonus draw state. It's going to go on forever. There is no maximum number of points as far as being successful in the draw is concerned. A couple states we have there, Montana works that way in their bonus draws, Colorado for sheep, moose, and goat, Nevada for all species, and Washington. So
And don't be confused on Colorado because they call it a weighted point draw. It's the same as a bonus.
It works exactly the
Exact same.
Yep. Then when you go over to a preference point draw, that is totally opposite, right? From a bonus point, where this is awarded a point, 1 year of preference for every year you've applied unsuccessfully or purchased a point. And that's almost a top-down draw. So we're going to award permits or tags from those with the most points that applied for that hunt and work our way down until we run out of permits. So if you do not have the points, there's essentially no random chance for you to draw. That's a true preference system, where points do help you.
Yeah, well, that's the only way.
That's it. It's the only way in.
Yep.
Now, what we're seeing in a lot of states that sometimes we use the word bonus or preference, but they're technically a blended draw, where Arizona is going to save some of their permits for a preference draw, those that have the most, and the rest go random. Or Montana is going to save 75% of the preference licenses in the general for those with the most preference points, but we're going to save 25% of the licenses for those that have 0 points.
Which in that case, there is no bonus point.
Just random.
Just random.
Yep, everybody was 0. Utah is a 50-50 split. Half of the permits are going to go to a bonus draw or a preference draw, and the other half are going to go random. Everybody's got a shot. So keep that in mind as you look at these states and species. Even though bonus means something in one state, it might not act the same in the next state, even though it's the same word.
And we use hybrid draw a lot of times too for that same blended draw. I mean, they're potato means the same thing.
That's right. Tell us about last year's odds.
So this is something that we look at all too often in here on a daily basis. So basically what that screen is showing you is this was last year's draw. And a lot of times people get caught up and they say, well, I had 20, there's a 26% chance at 17 points for that unit 76 tag. The problem with that is that was last year and you had 16 points going into last year if you have a team this year. So that's not a good representative that you will have a 26% chance this year, because last year nobody drew in your point level. So you see a graduation that starts going up. And so a lot of times we'll look at that and take for instance, the unit 49 right below it. Only 5% of the tags drew at 14 points. So there's a pretty good chance that that's going to go to 15 points, and that's going to be a percentage off 15 points the next year. I mean, that kind of ties into point creep a little bit. But because there was so many people that applied for that hunt, 95% of people with 14 points didn't draw it. Guarantee that same 95% is going to apply the next year for that tag again. And so now that's going to just bump it up into 15 points. And that's when you start running into point creep. Contrary, like you look at some of these down low, like unit 69, where it says 100% with 5 points, that could possibly draw out the same point range. It's probably going to be a percentage, but everyone that applied, with 5 points, they might draw out at 5 points again, because there's no carryover of 5 point applicants into the next year that applied and didn't draw. So they're not going to go to 6. So that's a good way to kind of look at how you're sitting on your point level, how to read and interpret those draw odds, and just kind of game plan for the following year to try and figure out if you have a good likelihood of getting the tag, or if you don't.
So this is a screenshot from Top Rut Draw Odds, which all elite members can access. Just realize you're always looking at a year in the past. You're looking at what happened on last year's draw, trying to predict where you fit in for this year and where it's going to draw out.
Yeah. And one question we get every once in a while, and I don't know where this concept came from, but there's kind of a misnomer out there that if I go into the draw and I have 14 points, then I go into the draw with 15 because my application is worth a point. That's not correct. If you have 14 points, you go into the draw with 14 points. That's what they're looking at. The only caveat to that is in states that have, like you said, the bonus draw, like Utah or Arizona. When you go into that, I guess Nevada too, when you go into that, your application is viewed as another chance in the draw. So then in essence, you don't have points, but you have that many chances in the draw. So if you had 15 points, you'd have 16 chances in the draw. But on these, when they're going on a preference draw based off your points, that is the level you're going into the draw at. Exactly how many points you have.
That's correct. You think of when they run the draw in a state, they sort everybody by point level in a preference draw state like we're showing you here, or in a blended draw. They're going to sort everybody by points and then have mini draws if they need to at that point level if there's not enough permits to go around. But your point level of how many current points you have is what you go in at.
Yep.
So the question we feel a lot of time, I think I can catch it. Catch it meaning I think I can catch the curve, or I think I can catch the points needed to draw said hunt. So here's another screenshot from Top Rut Draw Odds. This is for an Arizona elk hunt. Now it's very hard, difficult tag to draw. But what I want to point out here is that at 28 bonus points last year in 2022, there were 2 applicants. Choice number 1, see 2 applicants there, and 2 tags were issued. So that was 100% draw at 28 points. So if you're sitting there saying, well, I have 22 points, so I only have to wait 6 more years to draw. That is entirely inaccurate. How you have to look is these 2 tags per year are being issued in the bonus pass, those with the most points in Arizona, but they are going to go to these guys the next year. There's 4 there. There's 8 the following year. You know, there's 14 the next year. I mean, you see the problem as you start saying, how many people are ahead of me? If I'm sitting down here at, say, 22 points, it's going to take a lot longer than 6 years to catch up to the curve of where these tags are being drawn at. Now, this may, if you've never seen this before, this may be very disheartening, but it is the truth of how it works, that we are always trying to calculate how many people are ahead of me in the draw. 2 tags a year on this specific hunt, you've got dozens and dozens of people that are going to have to draw before you are. So never look at the distance between you and the point level it's drawing at now. Look at how many people are ahead of you for that hunt.
And realistically, like, this is the only way to beat point creep is to understand it.
Yep.
So if you understand what you're up against and the truth about where you sit in actually drawing the tags you're going after, if you can understand it, then you can pivot and you can look at your different options that you might have a chance at in the same amount of time that you thought you had a chance at this one.
Correct. Because I would dare to say that most of these applicants with 16 to 20 points, somewhere in there, have no idea that they're waiting for something they will not catch in their lifetime. If that's the only hunt you want in Arizona, great. You've got a random chance. You can apply. Your points give you extra chances, but realize the guaranteed tag or the bonus tag is probably not going to come to you in your lifetime if you're sitting way down in this point range.
Yeah.
I don't know how else we can put it bluntly, Garth.
No, I mean, that's a perfect way, because they have this age-old saying that the truth hurts. Sometimes it does, but it can also set you free, right?
It can. Yeah. There's plenty of other hunts. We chose a horrible example here. It takes a lot of points, but I want to illustrate the point.
Yep.
So I don't want to waste my points, Garth. I've been building for 20 years. This is common.
Very, very common.
Jared,
Yes.
you hear it all the time. I don't want to waste mine. I've invested, I've earned these points. Don't tell me to apply for a hunt that takes less points than I have, because that would be wasting, in quotes.
I did that very thing this year. I left a few points on the table in that state that Garth's pictures in. In Arizona, I'm at 23 elk points. I put in for unit 1 as my second choice. It took 19 last year. Technically, I left like 4 points on the table, 3 to 4 points. But we happen to know an associate of ours that put in with 21 that didn't draw. So it jumped. We'll talk about that a little bit. But point is that Austin's making, and I think it's super important, is very rarely does trophy quality truly equate to points required to draw it. I mean, Montana's a good example of it. There's a couple of units in Montana that are super hard to draw for the rifle permits, like the elk horns. And honestly, the draw odds do not properly reflect the trophy quality of that particular hunt. It's not as good as you would think for as hard as it is to draw. So pick a unit, pick your expectations, and go. Leave a few points on the table if you need to.
For sure. I mean, the good example I always like to use with people is in Colorado in Unit 61. I mean, it's 23 plus points for archery, muzz. I mean, you get to the rifle hunts, you're talking 26 to 28 points. You're thinking, man, I've invested that many points. There's got to be some giant bulls there. And then you're shaking, rattling every single oak brush you can find to dig out a 300 bull. And you're wondering why the guy on the other side of the road on the over-the-counter hunt just plowed a same size bull you did. Well, it's kind of a tough pill to swallow, but realistically, if you don't get caught up in that, not like just burning your points on something that will suit your needs and not looking at them as just, wasteful, you could have had other hunts probably 10, 15 years prior to that you could have had just as good a bull.
Right. The one thing here on the sticky note, we always say no to points only in hybrid draw states. What we mean by that is we see a lot of applicants that say, I'm just building points. I'm just building points. I'm going to go in and buy a preference point or a bonus point only for this year. That's okay, but realize what you've done is wasted a chance in the random draw. So like in a state like Arizona, it costs $15 to apply for any species. It costs the same $15 to apply for a point. So why would you not give your chance to be in the random draw and maybe get lucky? Same cost, but you've got all those years, you're building points, and you've got a chance in the hat.
Yeah,
So-
that elk is a prime example. I drew that on a random draw with 3 points. I mean, I was a little stoned apparently when I got that picture taken, but I mean, I drew it with 3 points, and technically that takes 11 points to draw.
But you hit a random.
But I hit a random tag, and that's why I put in for that unit, because the random odds were a little bit better there than other units. So yeah, you never know.
You never know. So please apply in the draw where it costs the same in a lot of these states and try to get lucky. Okay, let's talk. Another thing we see with point paralysis is a lot of times people are waiting to build points, waiting for a better unit. And then what happens? Weather comes in and totally annihilates the unit you
Yeah.
wanted to go to. And we're going to see some of that this year.
We are.
We included this current moisture map. This is the state of Wyoming. They're not way over average, but there are some isolated spots that are just getting smoked with big snow, freezes.
Drifts, wind, yeah.
It's ugly.
Yeah, no, I mean, and this is a, a good example of that, because I can guarantee you that there is a lot of people out there that were sitting there waiting for the Grays River Valley to come back and Salt River Range to come back, basically the Wyoming range for deer to come back to where it was. They might have to wait a little longer. And they were taking some good bucks out there. The population wasn't what it used to be, but now all of a sudden you get a big winter stacked up, kind of sets you back to where it was prior. So like I said, it's a good example of why you don't just wait. If there's an opportunity out there in front of you, you should probably jump on it. I mean, I'm sure with the wolf reintroduction to Colorado, there's probably a lot of guys just scrambling like crazy to burn what moose points they have.
Yeah.
And elk points, just because you never know to the extent the damage is going to be.
The wolves are coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never know. And oftentimes what the states will do is just totally change the management objectives. We've changed a lot of that in the state of Utah this year. And we want more opportunity. We want to get more elk tags. We move the hunts maybe out of the rut into an October timeframe. I mean, they can totally change the game on you. And you can be saying, oh no, what was I waiting for? I should have gone while it was good, or I could go. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, they doubled permits in one of the units last year.
On the flip side of that, though, we have moisture and feed in southwestern states.
Well, and I've got the elk tag burning a hole in my pocket right down there where there's almost 200% extra moisture this year. It's part of the reason why I chose to quote unquote leave points on the table like we were talking about earlier. But at the same time, other people saw this too. And that's why, again, we've got a guy that probably had 1 or 2 points to spare that didn't draw it this year.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
You got to pay attention. Again, within reason, again, at 23 points, I don't want to sit on them forever, because one thing that we're going to stress off and on throughout this is that the state systems that have these super mature point systems are all getting a lot of pressure to reevaluate them. And I don't want to be left hanging after almost a quarter of a century of applying in Arizona with a pile of points that doesn't convert into a tag.
Well, and you were smart this year. Like we have in there, you hunted the year, not the unit.
Right.
So this year is a prime example of one where they went into the winter in good shape. They're getting pounded by moisture. We're not in fear of any winter kill over there. Even if it's not the unit you were targeting, there's going to be some tremendous antler growth. Everything is lining up, and actually the season's rolled back.
Yeah.
Like
There were a lot of factors.
there was a lot of good things happening this year, and a reason to get in there on that hunt when you did.
Right. Now we'll see what it turns into.
You never
We
know.
don't have the elk steaks in the freezer yet.
You're going to try, though.
We are going to try.
Well, that's the good side of watching your points and seeing what you can draw, but keep up on that for sure. Now we're going to go through a couple states here and talk about point issues, point changes that I think we've got 5 states here that we'll go through that have the biggest changes or potential changes coming up.
Wyoming takes the cake. Like
Yeah,
the
every year.
last few years, boy, they have really doubled down on changing things there. I mean, we're obviously the big one was the 90-10 split, and the fact that they went into this, they went away, I think it was 75-25 before, for sheep and moose, and I think sheep, moose, goat, and all of them. But basically they went in there and they changed that up without revamping their draw system. And so what's happened is now it's put them in a tough predicament, because now there might not be any random tags for sheep or moose.
Right.
Like, period. Because of their preference draw, which we touched on earlier, they have a preference draw and for a certain amount of permits, but there has to be so many permits to actually issue a random tag. So it put them in a bad situation. But what happens? Then they start discussing changes.
Yeah.
Then they're like, okay, well, let's modify it. Let's change it then, because obviously this isn't going to work. But they went back to the drawing board. They got recommended some changes, and through legislation, they said, nope, we like it the way it is, mostly because the residents, it works for residents to a certain extent,
Sure.
but for non-residents, it absolutely doesn't work. But just because they didn't modify that draw this year, that doesn't mean they're not going to modify it yet next year, or try to, and maybe go to a bonus point system for all these non-resident hunters.
Right.
Who knows? They're just trying to attract applicants at the greatest rate possible and show some return from those people. The moment that they stop attracting new applicants, they panic and they're going to start changing.
That's right. So we're seeing that the Wyoming is one of the few states left where you do have to front the license fee when you apply. So it's an expensive investment to be in. And if there are no random tags like for sheep at all,
Yeah.
your odds are 0.0 of getting that tag. So you have to start asking yourself, is it worth the application fee, fronting that money? And do I want to build $150 preference point each year for those
Nothing.
species?
Because you'll never catch.
You'll never catch. Tough questions to ask, but depending on where you sit, you need to ask those questions.
Yep. The good thing about Wyoming, though, is like their preference draw, they have not changed it yet for elk, deer, and antelope.
Right.
And the nice thing about it is they do issue enough tags to where it works. You
Correct.
can kind of time it. Now, there's some point creep that goes along with that, obviously, but there's still enough hunts out there that are available for non-residents to where you can actually put those preference points to use, build some up. And this is where we kind of talk about the blended or hybrid. And I know we say, you know, in a hybrid draw, never do it, but we're talking about the preference portion of this. So absolutely, like you can put in build points until you get to the level and then draw your tag.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a state that we highly recommend.
For sure.
If you're interested in elk, deer, and antelope opportunities, you have to be applying in Wyoming.
Yeah, I've drawn 2 random antelope tags there in units that it would have took me another 3 years building points, just because you look at the random odds and I'm willing to front that amount of money, and they're going to give them to somebody.
That's right. Next thing we want to talk about is Colorado. So Colorado really screws up the system with their point terminology, right? So
Yeah.
talk about sheep, moose, and goat first. They have 3 preference points that are required for you to build to get into any of these ram, bull, or
Mountain goat hunts.
billy goat hunts, I should say.
Well,
Not
even
all of
nanny.
them.
Yeah,
all
nannies take
gonna
more
go.
than that too. Yeah.
But ideally, it is a preference draw, but the cap is 3. So they're not going to draw down into the 3, 2, 1, 0 level. They're going to draw above 3. So once you have the 3 preference point minimum, then they'll start giving you weighted points. Those are just feel good points because they act as bonus points, give you an extra weighted chance. But realistically, you're just in the draw, in the random draw once you have the minimum 3. Now, those 3 minimums are going to cost you $100 each per year. So it's kind of a barrier to get in. You got to buy 3 years of those $100 each. Then once you're in, I personally don't build points after that. I'm just sitting at my 3 preference. I don't care about $100 weighted point for each species. It's not worth it for me. But I know I'm in that random draw forever. As long as I keep applying $10 for an application, it's worth it.
Like here's for instance, and I told these guys today, I was talking to an individual that had 20 weighted moose points. And we looked up his odds. We jumped on Top Rut and saw that with 20 weighted moose points, the best chance he had at drawing one of the moose hunts, like his best odds were 7%. His worst odds were 1%. I mean, so if you look at that and you say, okay, well, what was my odds at 0? So I looked at him at 0 when I first pulled it up. Well, everything was less than 0.1%. But he was still, they were still in the draw. And the thing you have to remember is, okay, so if I ride this out and I build points for 20 years, that means I'm going to have a 7% chance at drawing. False. You're not, because everyone else keeps climbing up that leaderboard as well with you. And so what we've seen in some of these bonus points or bonus point states is whatever kind of point section you're in, if they're not issuing enough tags to kind of clear some of these guys out, your odds never really get any better because your group maintains the same amount of odds as you move up that chain. So I don't want to say that you're cursed with that point, that, whatever chance you have right now. But if other people drop out, yeah, you might pick up 0.1% here or there. And maybe over 20 years, you might get up to 2%. But you got to ask yourself, is it worth it?
Yeah, we've kind of defined our place in line in a lot of these states. And you got to realize that you're not climbing the ladder. You may just be moving the ladder together and you're stuck on the same step.
It's like going the opposite way on an escalator. You're moving. Kind of.
Burning calories.
Yeah.
So on preference points for elk, deer, and antelope, a little bit different. That is going to be a preference draw for non-residents and be awarded top down. So see where you fit, build your points for that. It's just $10 to apply for that. So it's worth it to build those, see which hunts you can draw. But if you're sitting at, a lot of people are in that 10 to 15 point range for elk and deer in Colorado. What do you tell those guys? Are they stuck?
Honestly, like Colorado does have, you can see some no man's land, like we like to call it. Deer is hard to find no man's land if you have the ability to hunt with archery, muzzleloader, or rifle, because they offer so many different hunts and a wide array of them. But realistically, once you get past, 15 points, you start slowing down. Like then you start just seeing you're kind of on that escalator again. You're just keeping pace with those hunts that you could have drawn 2 or 3 years ago. And that's when I start dictating no man's land. But the thing I like about Colorado and their preference point type draw, there's so many available hunts down there at this low point level that never go up. They'll be at 1 to 2 to 3 points. They've been at that level for the last 10 years.
Right.
So
they simply stay at that level because the supply equals the demand.
Correct.
At that level. And so it doesn't creep.
I preference draw states get a bad rap all too often because everyone likes to point out the extreme cases,
the unattainable
units, the 201s, the ones like that go up a point every year and we're 30 years deep into it and guys still can't draw some of them tags they want. But if we point it out, like that's like 5% of the hunts available.
You're looking at the wrong part of the
correct
draw.
So the good news is if you're one of those guys looking just to jump in, man, you got a ton of options.
Yeah.
But don't look at the best hunts in the state because then you're going to get in the point paralysis
trapped. Before we move on, we have had several questions about Colorado. Are they going to change the system, etc.? Can we talk a little bit about what we already know?
They changed a lot of it this year for the harder to draw units. So they determine their non-resident quota based off of how hard it is for a resident to draw. So they've redone that equation for this year, and we're going to lose a lot of our non-resident quota for the tougher to draw hunts this year. That's a big one. But like you say, you watch their commission meetings, there's nothing off the table for Colorado, not changing the system.
It's all out there. And for those of you that are curious about like which hunts are the ones that got the non-resident quota dropped, just look in the regulations, pull it up online, or if you got it mailed to you, look in the regulations, there's a little plus sign next to that hunt code, and that will dictate that that's going to be a 20% non-resident quota instead of a 35 non-resident quota. So that's a good way to look.
Almost half of the tags are gone on those hunts.
Oh yeah, for sure.
From 35 to 25, we're going to see extreme point jumping, not even creeping.
It's not creep, it's a leap.
point leaping
Point leap.
Yeah.
on those hunts. So be aware of that. If you thought you had one in the bag for Colorado this year, check and make sure the quota is going to stay the same for non-residents, or it could jump substantially. They've also talked about maybe sharing points in the future when currently they don't. So Colorado could get blown up over the next few years, and the Wolves may do their own work over Colorado. So we'll see.
I got a feeling by 2025, there's going to be a lot of things that are different there.
Next state, lovely state of Nevada. This one is interesting because if you think back to the first slide, this is a bonus draw where there is no preference component to the draw at all. You get extra chances and you get squared bonus point extra chances. So you get exponentially more.
And Montana is essentially the same system for the limited entry hunts. We've had several questions on Montana particularly. So this example is going to help you understand how it works in Montana as well for limited entry hunts.
Perfect. So the question is, well, if they're squared, my odds are growing exponentially. Doesn't that help me? Yes and no. We've decided, yes, it does help you when the applicant to tag ratio, or the demand versus supply, is closer to 50-1. What I mean by that is you look at an elk hunt where there are almost 6,000 people applying for just a few tags. Squared bonus points doesn't really help. You can see that in our bottom left example here, that even with 28 points last year, you're talking 7% odds. That seems bad to me.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, 7% is better than 600% but you say, is it that much better? That is the max. No one has more than 28 in the draw last year, so the very best odds are 7.
This is why I love hunters, because hunters are the only ones
So
that
you're
are saying there's a chance.
you're-
You're saying there's a chance. Like, they don't see 93% chance you're not getting it. They see 7%. We're gonna nail that thing.
Hey, before I let these two negative Nellies take us completely off course, I do want to remind everybody that the only way to get these tags, outside of possibly buying a guaranteed tag through an auction or landowner tag, the only way to get all of what we're talking about, you still have to be in the draw. And we all want to go do it. We all burn a lot of coin each year on long shots like we're talking about. So again, it's still the only way to play.
We
It is.
have been recipients of tags in Nevada and all went there and had incredible hunts.
Yeah.
Like, I still tell people to this day that one of the best elk hunts I've ever had was in the state of Nevada. I had a 5% chance of getting it. By hell, I got it.
Yeah.
That's right. Oh, you guys. So when it does work though, and you can apply this over to Montana, when there are fewer tags, when there are fewer applicants vying for the same tags, you are going to have exponentially better odds. So like an archery deer hunt that has very few people applying and the ratio is better, your points do help you exponentially. At 12 points on this hunt last year, you'd have a 46%. Hey, now I feel like my points help me.
Yep.
Get out of the way, everybody else.
Yep.
So think about it, even when you're 28 points, when that goes up to 48 points, 20 years from now, what are their odds going to be? About the same if no one drops off, because that whole exponential curve is grading up the hill together.
Yep.
So does that sound too sad? Hopefully not.
No, I already straightened you guys out.
No, I'm
We're
glad you
golden.
did.
We're golden.
So that's Nevada.
So, yeah, and then Arizona's another one of these blended, right? They have a preference draw, then they also have a random draw. But the random draw, that actually, the points you had going into it, those points help you out in the random draw. They let you have extra chances. This is the one time when that little thing happens and you get, say you got 6 points, you go in the random draw with 6 points, and guess what? You got 7 chances because you got an application.
Woo.
Yes, but 20% of the overall tags go there, but for non-residents, 5% can be drawn in that preference draw, and the other 5% can be drawn in the random. And I know we talk about changes. This was a change that came about a number of years ago, but before then, all of those tags were eligible to be drawn in the bonus, and it kept point creep down to a certain extent, but it was inevitable, with the amount of applicants that was coming on board. And so what Arizona saw is they saw they saw potential for applicants to quit applying because nobody was drawing a random tag. And eventually the applicant number was going to catch up to them and no one was going to get a random tag. So they went in there and they made that change for non-residents. They said, you know what, we have to at least maintain up to 5% for the random draw for applicants that don't have max points. Which, I mean, it was a good change. I mean, it slowed things down a little bit for guys that had a lot of points, but it was a needed change. But it goes to show you like these points are not something that's you're not buying this like as like so I've heard guys say, hey, I want a refund on all my points that I've spent on this the last how many years because you just changed the game. Well, it's going to happen. You just have to know that's going to happen. It's, you know, you can't transfer these onto your kids. I mean, they're your points, but just understand it going into it that this will happen. But anyways, I go on a tangent. So when I get looking at these other hunts, the cool thing about Arizona is like they have hard to draw hunts. Archery hunts are all pretty hard to draw. But if you look at it, they have late archery hunts. 3 to 6, 7, 8 points. You can still go hunt elk there in units with big bulls. Late rifle hunts. There's some really good hunts out there for 8 to 12 points. So you can still go on some really good hunts there. You know, if you've been putting in for 20 plus years and you haven't drawn a tag for mule deer because you're trying to chase down some of those late ones, they have options. They have early hunts for mule deer. You know, they have coos deer hunts. It's a deer point. I love states like this that give you outs. And this is a state that gives you an out. You can actually have some options to shift into, and you're not just pinned into this narrow stretch where you just apply forever. So I like it.
Try to go to Arizona more often and
For
sort
sure.
through the odds, sort through the units. We try to get to Arizona every year if we can. One of us is going to find a way to get down there. And it's not all disheartening when you look at some of these other options.
No, it's a super cool state to hunt.
Yeah, love it.
So much diversity of habitat.
Now your favorite.
I'll jump on the sword here. First of all, I think the last YouTube video that we did, the last hosted one webinar, had much more detail around Montana's draw system. So be sure and check that out. I'm going to run through this one fairly quick today. Montana has a hybrid system where the actual deer or elk licenses are issued through a preference draw. The use it or lose it in bold is here for a reason. They issued it, or they started a new system recently where you can't build preference points perpetually. They'll purge them on you. So again, look for more detail on that other webinar. We're not going to go through this too deep. It's just important to note that you have to first get an elk or a deer tag or a license, a combo license, they're called, combination license, in one part of the draw. And then at the same time, if you want a limited entry permit in these special use or special units that have special seasons, weapons, etc., then you're going to apply for the limited entry permits. Again, the combo licenses are a preference draw, and the limited entry licenses are a bonus point draw to make it even more confusing. If you're an archery elk hunter, highly recommend building bonus points for elk in Montana. Deer, it's harder to convince ourselves to build bonus points for deer just because there's very few current limited entry tags that are worth chasing that where you have a remote chance ever.
Yeah, it almost goes back to that same tag ratio that Austin was talking about in Nevada. If there's enough tags in that draw, then that point system works like archery elk.
Yep. And there's a pile of good units in Montana that you can draw with not very many points. Again, it's a bonus point draw there, so you're never guaranteed technically, but they do score your points like we talked about in Nevada. And as Austin's illustrated, when the tag ratios are low enough, your bonus points when they're being squared add up fast in terms of an increased advantage in the draw.
Yeah.
And both those draws are dependent on each other. So if you want to actually go into that random draw for a limited entry tag, you must apply for the general license and be successful in drawing that general license before they'll consider your application for limited entry. So a lot of connections that have to happen there on a pretty expensive general license for non-residents.
Yeah.
I always like building elk points there because it's $25. And you can actually look at some of that and enter your points in the top right there and see, oh yeah, I had like 75% chance of drawing that tag this year. At that point, I'm like, I will go into that and suck it up and pay $200 for that 75% chance, but probably not for a 25% chance.
Yep.
Yeah.
Somebody asked earlier too whether or not Montana was a do not interstate. Hopefully that answered the question. If not, you can come back with that question later. We highly recommend both building elk points especially, but in general, putting Montana into your rotation all the time with Wyoming, Montana, Colorado. You should be, if you're an avid outdoorsman, you want to have those states in your lineup.
Have some bear spray.
Yeah, and a little bear spray from Southwest now. The grizzly bears are hungry.
Let's see, we've got Utah on here. Not a lot of changes currently for Utah, but they do have a mature bonus point system, meaning it's been going since the early 90s. And we've got bonus points for all the limited entry for the once in a lifetime species, sheep, moose, goat, and bison, elk, deer, and antelope is all bonus points as well. So in that instance, it's a blended draw. They're going to give 50% at least of the tags to those with the most points, and the other 50% are going to go random.
I like how you say there's not a lot of changes. There isn't to the draw system,
Not to the draw.
but what Utah likes to do is invent new hunts, more difficult hunts, like just to purge and try to get some of these people moving through the point system, which I'm okay with.
Sure.
Like, give me more options to burn those points and we'll get out of here. But yeah, they're constantly adding new hunts. I mean, they added a bunch of new elk hunts this year.
Yep.
They moved some draw elk units into general elk units. Like, they split the general elk into 2 hunts. So they've made changes, just not to the draw system.
Just not to the draw. And most recently, we're gonna annihilate all the mountain lions.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. Don't get going on that.
We'll talk about that later. But preference points, those apply to general mule deer, which you can apply for limited mule deer and general mule deer, 2 totally separate species, if you will, and point systems. So all of our preference point species is a preference draw. You have to have the points necessary, like Colorado, to be able to draw those permits. Otherwise, you're out. There is no random component to the general season mule deer. Same with all our antlerless species, elk, deer, and antelope.
And that's one place where you can get kind of that point paralysis, because they have, I mean, we have so many, how many general deer units do we have? 20, 30? So they have 30 of these. There is a small margin between the worst and the best, in my opinion.
From a trophy quality.
From a
point of view.
trophy quality, yeah. So if you can draw a 2-point rifle hunt, why wait for the 7 or 8 point? You know, it's just, that's where you can get hung up in chasing down something that is supposedly the best, when maybe it's the best by like that.
Very good. Quick reminder before we jump into this last section, enter your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom. We've got our computers open. We're going to answer some of those here in a bit, but don't forget Q&A at the bottom there.
I got one.
You got a question?
No, I want someone to type in what that mountain range is.
Oh, is this like a trivia?
Yeah,
type?
it is. It is.
What mountain?
It's
is it?
Huntin full trivia. I don't know what you're getting for a prize, but I just want to see if someone can nail it.
Free membership.
Yeah.
There we go. Show that mountain range. Have I shown it long enough? Can I
Yeah, no, you can move on.
Okay.
We don't want to give it away.
All right. So as we go into point creep here, and we're going to talk about what to do with your points, couple things that we start on the right here to consider. How long can you not apply before they purge or delete, erase your points? So a couple states will never get rid of your points. I always recommend building 4 or 5 deer points there. If you're interested in big whitetails, you can build those 4 or 5 points and sit on them forever. They're never going to erase them. Same with Oregon, Utah, Washington. Now, a couple of these other states, you got to keep on it. If you happen to miss a draw one year, you just straight up forget, or you wanted to build some for your kids, but maybe sit out for a while. They're going to have purge limits on them. So Nevada, Wyoming, going to purge 2 years. And if you don't apply for, somewhere between 5 and 10 years, each state has a different reg on this. They will purge your points. So don't think that, I applied there years ago, I probably still have some points. You might not.
There's a couple of guys that I think, like, the other thing, like, you look at those purge points, guys got caught on Wyoming when they changed that, and they went to, you don't build a point after you apply in the draw, and they probably stayed at the same point level for half a dozen years when they realized, oh crap.
Yep. And then they purge them.
And then they purge them.
On the left here, we have a little cheat sheet of, can I apply with my buddy? So does it make sense to build grandma deer points, and maybe I'll share with her and ride her points, if you will, meaning you're going to apply as a party and they're going to average your points. Well, some states that works. Wyoming, for example, you can apply up to 6 people on a group application and they take an average of those points. So yeah, you can essentially find someone with more points than you and they will raise your average. Your group application is considered a that it has those points assigned to it, and you may be able to draw the tags you're looking for. We're gonna do the same thing in Utah, but Colorado, that comes up a lot. There isn't a limit on a group of people, but if you apply and you've got 2 points and you apply with someone with 0, you go in with 0 on your application. They look at the lowest guy in the group, and that's what everybody gets in that application.
And that's a tough one because obviously there's probably some guys that would get out of that point system if they were able to share those points because they are trapped in kind of that no man's land like we discussed earlier. But at the same time, like you could look at it and say, well, yeah, I am applying my grandma, my wife, my kid, like everyone else that's not going to hunt. And I know that just so I can bring my points up to the same average once I draw and I go back down to 0. So in essence, like Colorado, the one thing they do kind of put in there is you can't really play the game. Like they don't, you can't put in a bunch of extra people and flood the draw,
right,
basically, and build points and point bank. You know what I mean? Just to ensure a draw. So I love it or hate it. That's the way it is.
Yeah. But realize if it does make sense in your situation, it's a way to buy yourself in, even though you may end up throwing their tag in the trash because grandma's not going to use it.
Yeah.
They may be able to help you draw that antelope tag in Wyoming or a deer tag or whatever it may be.
Can you imagine averaging out a special out tag next year in Wyoming and throwing that in the trash?
It's going to be expensive. Yeah, it's not for everybody.
It's not for everybody.
All right, let's talk about point creep. What is point creep? I don't understand it, and how does it apply to me? So this example I pulled here is from the Utah Paunsaugunt. So it's very sought after deer hunt in southern Utah. But what they're going to do, this is last year's draw. So pulled from Top Rut, they're going to give 7 permits total. They're going to give 4 in the bonus or the preference draw, and they're going to give 3 random. Okay, they're going to err on that side of more than 50% to the preference. So one lucky guy applied with 26 points, and of course he drew the 1 tag. And there was 8 that applied with 25 points because we're starting at the top down. And there was only 3 permits left. So we held a mini random draw. 3 lucky individuals got the tag and 5 were left without it. Well, where do those 5 guys go? They were awarded a point and they go up to 26. That is point creep. So if you jump to the bottom here, you'll see, well, how many people are there? Well, those 5 that didn't draw, if they apply for the same hunt this year, they're going to go in with 26 points. You go down a level to 25, there's 12 sitting there. There's 20. You see the problem as you go down the list. Just because it took 26 points to guarantee that permit this year, you've got a lot of people ahead of you. And we run into this a lot where guys say, I'm just waiting for a Paunsaugunt tag or just waiting for tag X. Realize you've got to count everybody in between you and where it's going to draw. Divide that number by how many bonus permits are awarded per year. That tells you how many years it's going to take for you to catch the maximum draw. That is point creep in one of the worst examples.
It is.
But Utah does have 3 random permits. So you say, well, at least I'm in the random and I got extra chances. You and 3,171 of your closest friends do have a random chance. Those odds also available on Top Rut are realistic odds based on everybody's extra chances. And if you're going in with 1 point, is where I pulled this example, you have less than 0.1% chance in the random. So realize point creep may get the best of you if you wait too long, and don't look at max points being 26 for this hunt and think you're just, whatever number of years you're off. You're probably not. Let's take it to another example where we're actually going to count how many people are ahead of us. Bighorn sheep, Arizona. This is my personal example, divulging personal information here,
I like it.
but I apply in Arizona. I have 28 bonus points. I've never missed a year since I started applying. And I have a lifetime license because I grew up there. So I go in the resident draw pool, best case scenario, right? However, I have 28, the max is 34. I'm only 6 years off of max, right? Simple math would say, I got 6 more years and I'm there. Sadly, that is not true. There are 926 people with more points than me because they're older than me. They started in the system earlier. So they're going to give out about 28 tags a year to the max point group. And I only have 33 more years to wait.
You're the
It's a
winner.
good thing you're young.
It's good that I am. So I take my vitamins. I'm trying to not die.
Glucosamine.
But this is point creep explained at the harshest level, but the most true level we could explain it, that you divide how many people are ahead of you by how the state awards those permits, and you can see yourself. So now we ask the question, 33 years from now, we're going to be at over 60 bonus points. Is a state going to allow that to happen? Are they going to allow a 60-point system? Now, this is not taking into account die off, because some of these guys are going to die. They have more points than me. Sadly, we don't live forever. But how attractive is a 60 or 50-point system to a new applicant wanting to get into hunting?
Yeah, I
Like-
mean, it's scary to death. Yeah, I
scary.
mean, you wouldn't even start down that path. I mean, I guess, so eventually they're gonna change it. I mean, because they're gonna start losing applicants, they're gonna start losing interest in people applying for that because it's not attractive.
It's not attractive. And sub 30 points was maybe more attractive. We could stomach it. Yeah, we're all going to live 30 more years. But you start saying how many people are ahead of me. And yeah, I've invested 28 years into this, but I'm not entitled to anything.
No, and I'll go back to the point Jared made. Like, I apply for sheep every year in Arizona, every year.
For sure.
But I understand that I'm not ever guaranteed to get that tag, ever. If I do get it, amazing.
Great.
It'll be a fantastic hunt and I will appreciate it. But I understand that I'm probably never going to get, odds are I never will.
So change your perspective.
We got a bunch of questions early on that I answered right away, and that was kind of like, which are the hardest to draw tags that I should start building points for right now? Unfortunately, what we're illustrating is the hardest to draw tags. You're probably never ever going to get them, specifically when you talk about Shiras moose, bighorn sheep, and mountain goats in the lower 48. Pretty much, I always consider it a donation to conservation.
Yep.
If I went to a raffle, a local banquet, whether it's Ducks Unlimited or Sportsman for Wildlife, whatever local banquet I go to, I'm going to spend some money on raffle tickets. I'm probably not going to win because I'm not lucky that way, but I'm going to donate that money. I hope to win. That's kind of what your sheep application looks like.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't hurt my feelings so bad when I keep getting rejected.
Yeah.
If I get to kill one someday, great.
Yep.
So just like Jared's saying, and we've mentioned multiple times to wrap up, changing the game. You had a chance, now we're going to change the game. That's the only constant we have. What are the states going to do? Some of this is our personal thoughts. Some of this is what commissions are talking about, game commissions, but honestly, they don't know what to do. We've got a mature point system. Maybe they abolish it, start over. It's happened before. Nevada's done it before. Change the program. Maybe they make your points mean something different. Maybe preference goes away and just becomes bonus, but they need to attract newer hunters. They need to attract those, even though you've been loyal and you've applied for however many years, we have to keep new people coming into the program.
And the bad thing is all too often the state game and fish agencies take it on the chin when they go in and make these changes, because you have applicants that have been in these systems, like you say, they're mature, they're 30 plus years old. So they've been, investing in this for a good portion of their life. And now the state comes in and says, you know what, when we started out with this, it was a pretty good deal, but because of applicant pressure and because of the demand on the resource and the dwindling resource, it now isn't working and we've got to change it. And so I don't fault those game and fish divisions for going in and changing it, because it, like Arizona did, it needed to be done. And it's a tough pill to swallow So, I just ease up on some of those game and fish agencies. I mean, some of them, like, not to their management practices, like hold their feet to the fire for that. But when they go in and change the game, don't look at it and say, you just like wasted my life because now I can't use these points that I build up for what I intended on using them. I mean, they have to do something.
They have to. Yep. Just gonna be the game. Realize there's so many things that can change. And I think we're all used to that. We all survived COVID,
Yeah.
right? We all survived everything we're going through, but realize they need to recruit. These agencies are run like a business, sometimes not a very well-oiled business, but they need cash to come in. They need revenue, especially from non-residents, and they're going to keep changing the game to keep their biologists employed and to keep everything going the way they can.
And like it says on there, the one thing you can look at, things are going to change.
Yep.
Maybe not even the management, but things are going to change within that unit, like the die-off, things like that. I would definitely say, like this slide is saying, don't wait. Like, have more of a short-term plan.
Yep.
Don't have these 30-year sought-out plans where you're going to draw X unit after 25 to 30 years. Man, just keep going, keep hunting.
Yep.
Just have a quick turnaround.
And like Jared said earlier, build a multi-year plan. I want to try to get these preference states. Like, I'm going to go to Montana every third year for elk, or general elk, or I'm going to go to Wyoming every fourth or fifth year for general elk. Like, build a multi-year plan that makes sense, and don't say, I'm just going to sit around and build points and someday I'm going to cash them in, because that may not even be possible
Right.
by the time you get to something, or it may not be the expectations you had. Another reminder is, think about where you may move to someday. You say, is it worth building points in Arizona? Well, do you think you're going to retire there someday and, move to Sun City? And maybe it is worth having all those points. You may become a resident of one of these states someday.
Utah is a great example for me.
Yep.
Yeah.
I never would have thought I would live in Utah. I'm blessed to live here now. I came with a pile of points, and now they mean a lot. Whereas as a non-resident, I was just far enough off the bubble that I wasn't going to get those better tags. But it's been great for me. And we had this question earlier. Somebody was basically asking, our resident, is it like resident versus non-resident points? The answer is no. Your points are your points, whether you're a resident or not. They just go a lot further as a resident.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the only example where they don't have anything is if you move to Wyoming.
For
Then you're gone
for deer, elk, and antelope.
Yeah.
Poof. Yep.
So
No.
burn them before you move to Wyoming.
I'll interject here really quickly because I was in the same boat. So I hunted Colorado last year for the first time, and I was in the boat of like, well, I'll get 6, 7, 8 points and have this good hunt. After talking to the Huntin folks on this call, the don't wait and go now mentality. We did Colorado last year. It was hands down one of the most memorable mule deer hunts I've had and probably will have. I shot one of my best bucks to date, and it was with like a 1 point unit. So one of those go more often and don't wait. Like, firsthand, I had that mentality, and then again, Garth and the folks on this call talked me off that ledge, and we went and had a absolute blast, incredible trip.
And like that trip right there, just looking back, you can probably think of a half a dozen other people that probably burned a lot more points and went to units that took more points than that. And if they did better, like, good on them. But I mean, honestly, like, that's where it comes back. Points don't equate trophy quality.
Yep. If you're an onX Elite member, we want to remind you, you can access everything that Huntin offers digitally on our website for free. So you can log over, sign in with your onX, and access all of our unit profiles, all of our write-ups from the Hunt Advisors. We put a lot of work into our digital magazine online, all of our data on the website to make sure there's no questions left standing. Like, answer the questions. Don't just apply blindly and think you're doing something for the future. Like, take the time, sit down, and let's figure it out. If you do want to upgrade to where you can have unlimited hunt consultations with one of our Hunt Advisors on staff, we do phone, email, Zoom, all sorts of consultations. you can do that and we give you a discount for that. We also produce our digital magazine in a printed copy and we send that out. And we also give you a discount for that just for being an onX Elite member. So whatever we can do to help you take this plan and make a multi-year strategy, let's help you get to that next level.
Well, and that's one of the questions I was going to answer live. Kevin asked the question, new hunter, 2022, first season, successfully filled a deer tag. Congratulations.
Nice.
What advice would you give a new hunter in regards to where to start building points ASAP? I am on West Coast. Honestly, this is going to sound like a sales pitch, but I could not possibly answer this in a chat. It really is a consultation sort of approach. And that is what we do all day, every day.
Yep.
Is help people make plans like that. So I would recommend plugging into our resources here for sure.
And honestly, like we did, that was one of our webinars, was best bang for your buck. And we covered a lot of that, new applicants, what states you need to focus on. You can go back and watch that best bang for the buck webinar that we did this year.
Yeah, again, I'm going to interject the consultation side of things for me anyways, it really helps me individually spend that money on those state applications and know that I'm doing it correctly and not just throwing money away. Like, whether it be a 5-minute or a 15-20 minute phone call with one of these guys at Huntin, just after I'm done, I can, with a good conscience, swipe that credit card online and know that I have a plan and I'm not just, throwing money away and hopefully I get lucky and draw. So again, I would urge people to check that out for sure. It's well worth it.
About this.
Mule deer hunt giveaway.
It's coming up. March
It is.
15th is the deadline.
Like that's days.
Just days away.
6 days.
Like a pretty awesome giveaway for 2 hunters. We're just drawing one winner, but you can bring a buddy, spouse, friend, whatever, and totally free to enter. All you have to do is sign in with your onX Elite login, come on over to Huntin, activate your free membership, hit the button to enter, and you are in. And that hunt's going to be for this fall.
I mean, why wouldn't you? It's free. Everyone loves something for free. This is free.
That's right.
And the draw
Yeah,
on this is probably going to be about as bad as all the rest of them we talked about.
But you're the chance.
Yep.
So you're saying there's a chance. Awesome. No, yeah, definitely get signed up for that. And take advantage of the digital membership through Huntin. If you are an Elite member or if you are a premium member and you've been thinking about upgrading to Elite, it's well worth it due to, just the opportunities you get here with Huntin. Draws, we offer some different stuff for Elite, but take full advantage of that, especially the Elite members out there that are applying out West and they're not taking advantage of, the digital membership with Huntin. It just makes me cringe because there's so much good information out there and it's free. Get signed up, and while you're doing it, do it for March 15th and get signed up for this Montana mule deer hunt. So on top of this giveaway, we are going to give away a handful of onX t-shirts. We're going to throw the link for that in the chat below. So again, it's free. It'll take 2 seconds. Get signed up. We're going to send out a handful of t-shirts for everybody there. So make sure you check the chat and click that link, get entered.
You guys want to move into some live Q&A?
Love it.
Yeah, perfect. I know Jared did a very good job on your guys's and answering a ton of different questions all throughout. So I guess, Jared, was there a compilation of questions that were, pretty consistent? Anything you want to touch on your end before we get into a few?
No, I would say, again, there were a lot of questions around Montana because Montana has confused everybody. One of the live questions here, but I sort of answered it throughout the chat, is does Montana purge points? Again, they will purge your preference points. You can only sit on a preference. You can build one preference point in the fall period. The next year, you've got to go into the draw. If you sit out a full draw period, they take your $100, throw your preference point in the trash, and off they go. Your bonus points, however, never purge. So that one came up quite a bit. Outside of that, I think we're good to dive in on the rest.
Perfect. Yeah. And again, due to you answering so many on the chat, we don't have too many here, but first one, I'm 65 years old. Is it too late to start accruing points? And maybe a follow up on that is like, where would be the best places to accrue points?
I guess if I was going to answer that, one thing I would say is, first, you've got to set your expectations. As long as your expectations are set at the right level, and you can look at that and say, there's still plenty of hunts out there at 65 that I can draw in the next 2 years, 5 years, however long that you want to, roll down that road, and plan on hunting. There is plenty. I mean, Colorado's a great state. There's a preference draw state, so you can kind of guarantee some tags at a lower point level. Wyoming's still a good state for that. Even if you look at some of the general deer, like we talked about in Utah, that's a good state for that. Montana, like you just talked about, we just explained how you could draw a tag the very first year for general, and go hunting. What I would caution you on is trying to chase down point levels for some of these high demand hunts, like we talked about, that you're just not going to catch. It's not going to happen. So get your expectations realistic. And those are some really good states, in my opinion. I mean, any others that you would, maybe New Mexico.
We talked about Arizona too, with the fact that there's a whole bunch of different options in there, at least. So
that's right.
But again, don't get caught in it takes 20 to guarantee a tag and I'm going to chase it, because it'll be 40 by the time you do, or it'll be gone.
Perfect. Next one. I know you guys covered this in the slide, and I believe I know the answer to it, but actually I'll answer it and you guys correct me if I'm wrong. How about that? We'll see how much I'm learning from you guys. So with 2 elk points, does my cousin with 0 get an advantage if we both go to Colorado? My answer would be no. You'd go in as 0, right? Perfect. See? I am learning from you folks.
Nice work. Again, they are talking about averaging points. That was on the docket this year. They're talking about it, and all bets are off, but don't count on that.
Yeah, this year, 0 points.
Perfect. So one might be a tough one to answer, but how do I determine if it's worth my money to keep building points for Wyoming sheep?
Man, first of all, what's your wallet tell you? It's too much money. But honestly, like if they keep that same draw structure going forward, and they don't have any random tags, if you're at 19 points, maybe 20, you're realistically not going to catch any of the units to draw them. So just by building points, you're not ever going to guarantee, unless like you got 20 points and you're in Austin's kind of shape and you're young and lean and mean and you can outlast everybody. But realistically, that's what I would say.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
But never say never, because they'll probably change the draw 2 years from now. And then they'll be saying, hey, you told me not to keep these points, you son of a gun.
Yep. Actually, that is a great segue to the next question here. So do you think that Wyoming will ever revert back to the old system for sheep and moose?
Old system meaning old quota structure? I doubt it. They'll never go backwards. Residents aren't going to give up 15%. They've already got it, and that's who votes in the legislation. And we don't have any. I mean, it's done.
No, it won't go back. If anything, it may get more and more random, and less preference, but it is not going to go back to what it was.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Garth, I've got a question. What was that mountain range, or are you going to just keep people hanging?
Oh, yeah.
I answered it to everybody who posted it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Did people guess it?
Did they guess it? Yeah.
One guy got it right.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Nice.
Henry Mountains in Utah, the famous Henry Mountains.
Nice.
It's kind of like
yeah, I saw a handful of I saw some Montana mountain ranges in there, and all sorts of different stuff from Alaska to Montana and everything in between.
that's cool.
Cool. Last question I got here on my end, unless you guys have a few more. Do group applications increase your draw odds in any state?
No, unless the group you go in with, the guy you went with had 10 and you had 4, then it increases your chances because he has more points than they average them. But
he was being even more specific. He was basically assuming that if you went in with a group of 5, I think if I remember this question right, that you
Yep.
get 5 different chances to get a low random number. So I think you guys need to speak to that.
Yeah, that's a negative. So basically what you're doing is you're sharing that one application. So even if you have five applicants, it's still, you guys are all sharing the same application. So there's still one application in there that they will pull out. Now, if there's 5 people on there and there's 5 tags available in most states, then you'll get it. Wyoming, they'll over allocate. Wyoming's about the only state that I would say it doesn't hurt your chances. It never improves your chances, but Wyoming's the one that never hurts it. Other states, it could actually hurt your chances going in, like going in on one application, have a bigger group, because you might be going in for say there's 7 tags available and there's 5 on your group, and that state won't over allocate. If they pull your group app and there's less than the number of tags available that's in your group, they'll pull that application out and say, you have 5, there's only 4 tags. They'll just throw your application to the side and go to the next one. So it can hurt them, but it never helps it.
Gotcha. And looking back in the slides, Wyoming, you can have up to 6 people apply. So technically they could over allocate by like 5, right?
Yeah, you could go in with 1 and they pull your application.
Yeah.
Give everyone a tag.
Interesting for sure. Any other questions on your guys' end that we should cover?
There is a good one here. What about Wyoming general elk tag being split into several units or being regionized?
No.
You know, what's that gonna do? So that's on the table potentially for next year to split the Wyoming general elk. Instead of it being valid in all units that are open statewide, it would go to regions similar to deer.
They actually have a survey live on Wyoming right now. If you jump on Wyoming's website, and they're asking people for their input. So you can actually go in there and speak your piece and have some say on doing that. But yeah, they have a map on there too that actually has all the regions broke out. It's a little bit different, as Wyoming likes to do. They made it different than the deer because they can't have the same regions for both species. That would just be madness. So they have it broke down. They have tag numbers that are actually assigned to which unit is what. So they put some work and thought into it. But basically what they're talking about doing, there was a 7,250 tag cap for general non-resident licenses that were issued. So they're going to abolish that cap. And then they're just going to set, cap numbers within those regions, which I think is a good thing. But did I just answer the question or did I just ramble?
Nope, you answered the question.
Okay.
What it's,
I wasn't sure.
what it's gonna go is those first few years, people aren't gonna understand. The demand is gonna be all over the place.
It will.
So it's gonna be a mess for trying to figure out where you can come in. Some of them are gonna take probably if they do it, very few points, if any. And others are gonna take a lot. And yeah, it'll get messy. It'll be like the deer regions are.
Yeah.
Where it takes a ton to get G and a lot less for others. There's gonna be the same kind of demand shift.
Jared, you want to answer this one? Can you purchase a Montana deer elk bonus point at the time of application and have that applied to the application? Into the draw.
Yep, you already mentioned this on earlier, but your bonus point that you purchase at the time of application does not count. You go in with the bonus points that you have. But you can purchase a bonus point on the way into the draw in Montana. It's actually, I think it's $5 cheaper. The points only period, I think it's $25 for a deer or an elk point, and it's only $20 if you purchase it at the time of application. So you save $5 by going in, but it does not count for that application. Conversely, the preference point does for that application. Again, I hate Montana. And again, there's a lot more detail on this. I don't hate Montana. Shouldn't say it that way. I hate their system.
Yeah.
The preference point does count on the way in. So if you check the box and spend the extra $100 to buy a preference point, that does count on that application. Sufficiently confused?
I like it.
Wait, hold on. I got a question real quick.
Uh-oh.
If you have a point going into the draw and you select not to purchase a point at the time of application, then you go into the random draw, right?
No, you wouldn't go into the random draw because the only way you can get in the random draw is with 0 points.
Can't I select not to use my points?
But not to participate in the point system.
Seriously, this is where you're gonna go? I'm gonna ask some tough Colorado questions.
Put guard on the spot.
No,
I don't think that would matter. My understanding is you cannot have a point associated with your FWP login and be a part of the random draw.
Got it.
And again, there's a lot of
The
detail on
preference
this.
general draw.
And the preference
Yeah,
general draw.
Preference general draw,
Got it.
which again has random tag set aside and preference, kind of a hybrid like we've talked about in other
Yeah.
systems. Watch
it.
that other webinar. It's got a lot more detail on Montana.
For sure.
You like that?
I'm just
Like
glad that
that.
I'm a resident. Yeah, I'm just glad that I'm a resident in Montana. I don't have to deal with that side of things.
All you got to deal with is the clerk at Maverick.
Yeah. Give them my my $100 and get all my tags for the year, and then apply for
Yep.
some stuff. So yeah, it's much easier as a resident. I'm not advocating for moving here, by the way. It's not that good. But
What about this one? We said we do not recommend building points for Montana mule deer, but I understand putting in for sheep, moose, and goat in any state are donations, conservation. But what about elk, deer, and antelope? Are there any states we don't recommend building points for elk, deer, and antelope if you want to hunt those species?
There's a ton of layers to that question.
Sure.
Yeah.
For example, in Nevada, I was just talking to one of our license application clerks today about this. If you love hunting mule deer and are happy to hunt them with, especially archery, but happy to hunt kind of off seasons and marginal hunts, but remote, big country, I love Nevada.
Mhm.
Then Nevada's not a bad place to go chase mule deer points in, not points, but actually applications.
Hunts, yeah.
Hunts. And then once you're already sunk with the hunting license fee, the non-refundable hunting license fee, you might as well try to draw an elk tag, an antelope tag, a sheep tag, a couple different species of sheep you can apply for.
Mhm.
So those answers always have nuances to them. On the other hand, Nevada, if you're just passionate about elk, they do not issue enough elk tags to make it worth the investment, in my opinion,
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean,
to start now.
for sure. I mean, you got a very, very slim chance to get it. It's the same thing as like, take for me example, in Nevada, I don't know, I think I got 20, 21 deer points now. But I've been chasing down these hard to draw units. If I was going into Nevada, if someone said, hey, I just want to hunt trophy class mule deer and I want to put in for the best hunts available, I would say don't do it.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be invested into that. You could draw at any year, but your chances of drawing are probably never going to exceed 2, regardless of how long you put in. But those easy to draw, those, kind of in between hunts, it's a great state for that. But for the most part, I think most states have some of those options, except points in Arizona for antelope. That's ridiculous. That is one I would not chase down.
Shot in the dark.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost easier for us to focus on where you should go. Like, first of all, like, what are your trophy expectations? Or more importantly, what are your hunt experience expectations? And then we go and say, all right, if you're after antelope, then you need to be building points in Montana, probably for both weapons, because you can build a rifle point and an archery point in the same year. And by rotating through those, you're going to hunt speed goats a lot, and Wyoming, right?
Mhm.
Outside of that, we're going to look at almost every other speed goat draw and go, oh, I don't know.
Archery in Colorado.
There you go.
I'm letting the cat out of the bag.
That's true. Archery
That's
in
a good
Colorado.
one.
Not seeing any other ones here.
There was one here. Any idea on whether Colorado might go back to the old dates for archery deer and elk in 2024 or 2025?
They're discussing it. They've got 3 options on the table right now. One is to keep the current system that they have in place to kind of go in and muck out as many mature bucks as they can so they don't spread CWD all over the place. The other one is to go back to the old season structure and put that back in place. And then they had another one in there, and you can actually go on there and they have a survey on Colorado too. Then you can actually see these different season dates that they have. They have another one where basically they're basing, I think, the first rifle elk, because all the different seasons based off when the first rifle elk hunt starts. So they're going to start that instead of, I don't know what the basis is now, but then they're going to start it every year on the second Saturday or something like that. Anyways, so you can see all those season dates. You can actually go into Colorado Game and Fish's website, and there is a survey you can take, and it'll actually show you the different scenarios they have listed right there. But they are discussing it, which under the third scenario discussed kind of puts it back more in line with the old season dates than the new ones. It'll be a little earlier.
Gotcha. Well, that pretty much wraps it up on my end. Unless there's any last question burning a hole in your guys' pocket.
Make memories.
Yep. Making it younger.
Yep. Again, I can completely attest to that because I was, my mentality 3 or 4 years ago is I'm going to get, 10 points in Wyoming and Colorado and have all these awesome hunts and working with these folks here. They've, again, the Colorado example, they talked me into not going that route for a multitude of reasons. And I wouldn't trade that hunt last year for 10 points overnight personally. So, and the best part about it is I can do that hunt potentially in 2-3 more years again, and then again. So yeah, I completely have bought into that, and everybody on the call should definitely do that as well. Again, check out Huntin' Full digital membership, onX Elite members. If you're not taking advantage of that, you are truly, truly missing out. It is free. The wealth of knowledge is insane that you get by reading those digital magazines. So check it out. Personally appreciate you guys taking the time, Huntin' Full, to jump on with us and teach a bunch of folks all about application and specifically points. And yeah, stay tuned for everybody on. Make sure you check out future upcoming webinars with us. We've got several more with the folks at Huntin' Full, and get signed up for those. Even if you're not sure if you can make it, get signed up. We'll email you. We'll send out the recorded video after the fact. So if you get signed up, something happens, you can't make it, you'll still get notified about the video, and check out YouTube for all the past ones as well. So with that, anything final on your guys' end?
It's a busy season. Don't miss an application. There's no excuses.
As always, we appreciate the support and the turnout. It means a lot to us. So thank you guys. Thank you, onX, for hosting it. Thanks the guests for staying tuned.
Yep. Awesome. Well, have a good night. Thank you guys very much, and we'll catch you on the next one.